You're listening to Real Talk Texas on 570 KLIF News and Information. Now, live in studio, your host, local real estate expert Steve Hakes.
Welcome to Real Talk Texas. I'm your host, Steve Hakes, here on KLIF, AM 570, News and Information. Today in the studio, we've got, again, Alicia Trevino to talk about the North Texas real estate market. And we also have Brian Rogers of D.R. Horton, America's #1 builder for 11 straight years. And Brian's been with D.R. Horton doing new home sales for 10 years. We thought it would be great to bring Brian and Alicia in the studio today to talk about, since there's such a tightening of inventory out there, what's happening in the builder world, and find out really what's happening in the building industry. And as you know, you drive around the Metroplex, you see a lot of new construction, a lot of the highway things are happening. Downtown Dallas, Alicia and I talked last week about all of the cranes that are downtown and all the new units that are going in the urban area. And Brian, you're focused out in the suburban area with D.R. Horton, right?
Yes. I'm out in the east side of Dallas in Forney, about 20 miles east of downtown.
Okay, great. One of the things I wanted to first talk about is just the overall industry. What's happening? Let's start with Brian and Alicia, and let's talk about new builds and what's the national outlook and what's the local outlook on new home builds.
When I started 10 years ago, the market was booming, and there was homes coming up everywhere. And then, as everybody knows, over these last few years, there's been quite a cutback, and home builders didn't put nearly as much inventory on the ground. There was not as much new construction out there, and that is really beginning to change now because right now we're at about a 13-year low on inventory of new homes. There's not this huge inventory out there that a lot of the buyers seem to think.
Well, and a lot of the other thing that I find we've had some custom builders in on the show as well is, where do you build? I mean, I see, the footprint of D.R. Horton. They seem to be out in the suburbs. There seems to be some land out there to build on. Are you guys finding communities, finding it hard to find places to build new communities, or what's the outlook there?
I mean, it's always a challenge. We're constantly looking for land, constantly looking for communities. One thing that just like the new homes slowed down, the development of putting streets in and developing neighborhoods slowed down at the same time. So as we start running to an end of these developed lots and these communities, we're starting to see some huge price increases on land costs and things with them having to come in, cut streets, and do that over again.
I'm just curious. I mean, when you see a community go in like that, who puts the streets in? Who's responsible for doing that?
The developer of the community there's generally a land developer of the community. There are certain cases where D.R. Horton purchases the land and does that, but we prefer to purchase from a developer.
But the city doesn't do that for them.
Correct.
Okay. I always thought the taxpayers paid for those to go in. Maybe
no.
Not. Okay. Well, that's good to know, I guess. Well, and I guess that's part of the whole development, what it costs for a lot and things like that, because I would think that they would have to put a lot of things in like water and utilities and all those things when they're developing that land.
Right. Everything's pretty much built into the price of that home, and that is we sell the homes on the lots.
Well, with mortgage rates being so low right now, I mean, Alicia, we talk a lot about how affordable it is to buy a house right now, versus where it was, say, in 2004.
Right. Well, and I think that development has a lot to do with it. When he was saying that they were finishing out developed lots, that means that they have to go find new land and build out that new land. And so, therefore, there is going to be price increases. And with such a shortage of existing homes on the market, then the new homes are going to have to just really go up considerably. And we're going to see a jump increase of about 20% really quickly because it is supply and demand. When you have so much demand like we have right now, when there's a shortage of existing homes, the demand for new homes just skyrockets, and it's exciting to see.
Well, it's funny when I've talked to some builders recently in Fort Worth, which is not in your area, Brian, because you're in the east of Dallas area. But in Fort Worth, I mean, this gentleman was telling me that they built up so far in a community, and they didn't take down. The developer develops all the lots, right?
Right.
And then the builders start what they call taking down, so they'll say, okay, I want these 10 lots. Then they may build a spec, or they may have them available to sell, but that way they're securing a portion of that community. And I had one builder tell me that, they're almost sold out of the lots they had bought in 2009, 2010. and the new lots they were getting ready to take down, the prices were doubled just for the lot.
Yeah, so many developers so many developers during the boom bought all this land, developed it out, put in the roads, and then basically saved lots for other builders. When this all kind of went collapse, and it was almost overnight where people just stopped buying new homes, then the developer got stuck with all that land. So what they did is they slashed prices and they started selling those lots at considerably less. And I'm talking from $50,000 a lot to 10. So that was shared with the consumer, and therefore they were ready to reduce their prices on the build job. It's all relative. And so now the landowners control the market again, and so it's going to be harder to find the land. It's going to be more expensive to develop it, and so therefore you have to share that to the consumer. So I am really advising people, if you've thought about doing this, this is why you have to jump on it now, and why they jump so high. It's not you keep thinking, well, it's the same house. How come we're having to pay more? A lot of times it's land costs.
Well, and the other part of that is that these guys that have owned this property since 2009, there's carrying costs associated with that.
Beating.
So they've been paying interest on the money that they had either lost if they paid cash, or if they borrowed it, they're paying interest. Plus, they're paying taxes on that land for that carrying cost. So they got to get that back. Plus, like you mentioned, they got to get their price back to where it was. But they can't. I don't think they can just immediately raise it. Maybe I'm wrong. But I think they're going to have to test. They're going to test the market at least and see what these builders will pay to take down more lots.
In a good market, I've seen them raise the prices 4 or 5 times a year, and they go up $4,000 and $5,000 a time.
Yes, and you've got the land cost, but you've also got materials. I mean, everything involved with building a house. Every company involved in every portion of it has cut their margins to the bare minimum just to make it through this last few years. And just like the landowners and the developers, they're all bringing them back.
And D.R. Horton did a wonderful job of having homes on the ground. I think they're probably the only builder that still had specs when no one else did. And so they really did, give the consumer an amazing price just to keep building and have all their contractors still intact. And they've done a wonderful job of surviving in the market that we were in. It was very tough to do.
Well, I think you used the words before the show. You help keep new home construction industry propped up as a company nationally.
Very much so.
Well, and the other thing that, we're going to get into more for those of you listening out there that haven't heard of D.R. Horton, which I find that hard to believe, but if you haven't heard of D.R. Horton, we're going to get into more about, how they become the nation's number one builder and held that for the last 11 years. And Brian's going to share some of that and some of the secrets behind, what makes a D.R. Horton home so special. He's going to talk about some of the communities out there. We're going to have Alicia talk about buyer's representation and why that's so important for you. And so if you're listening and you're thinking about building a house or buying a house or selling your house, we've got the new service in place right now at the show here, and we're going to go ahead and pull your cell phone out. And type in this number, and then all you're going to do is put in the word, build, buy, or sell. Either one of those will put you in touch with the right people here at the show to help you move the process forward for you with some true experts we have in the studio today. Alicia Trevino of Alicia Trevino Century 21, and she's got offices in Uptown and Mesquite. And with Brian Rogers of D.R. Horton, and of course myself, Steve Hakes with Affiliated Bank. So go ahead and put in this number, 817-925-2546. That's 817-925-2546. And go ahead and text those words, and we'll put somebody in touch with you. Stay tuned. After the break, we're going to come back, and we're going to talk more about new home construction and availability of those new homes and what you can expect to find when you go shopping for those in the DFW market.